Greetings, I am Mark Foster. In this program, I would like to introduce you to some changes that I have experienced, especially over the last few years, but even more particularly in the last couple of months, regarding my approach to communism. About 10 years ago, I regarded myself as a Maoist-Third worldist. That was under the influence of the brilliant autodidact Jason Unruh, the founder of Maoist Rebel News and a podcaster of renown all over YouTube. I began watching Jason's programs on YouTube shortly after he started, actually, and I became very strongly influenced by them, and I soon began thinking of myself as a Maoist third worldist. So what happened? Well, I began to consider the alternate possibility that maybe, just maybe, there was some dialectical potential in the first world, in the West, or in the global North. That doubt, which I now regret, led me to a perspective known as Third Campism. Third Campism was developed by various individuals, most notably Max Shachtman, who later actually left Third Campism and became an employee of the AFL-CIO, which is a large union here in the United States. And the reins were subsequently taken up by Hal Draper and others. Hal Draper is the person that I became most interested in. Hal Draper, toward the end of his life, actually disconnected himself from heterodox Trotskyism. Third Campism is not really Trotskyist, for a number of reasons. One, Trotsky himself distanced himself from it. Well, distance is an understatement. He despised it. He attacked Max Shachtman and others who had started it. At one point, referring to a particular third campist, he said, "If this man is a Trotskyist, then I am no Trotskyist." Those are pretty harsh words. At the end of Hal Draper's life, he stopped calling himself a Trotskyist, and I think wisely so. But I was still attracted to the idea of Third Campism. Why? Well, because according to Third Campism, you have the first camp, which would now be NATO, the second camp, which would now be Russia, and the third camp, which would be the proletariat, and the subaltern, the people who are even below the proletariat, the basically othered members of humanity, people who are unwanted and who feel unneeded, the fourth world, as they are sometimes referred to. That was very appealing for a long time for me. I began to question it, however, beginning about a year ago, when I began to think, why are there only two imperialist powers, NATO and Russia? What about China? What about Turkey? What about Saudi Arabia? I don't know. I'm just talking off the top of my head. I'm not speaking from a script at all. So I began to have doubts about whether Third Campism was really an inclusive perspective that explained the way in which late capitalism works. And then I never stopped listening to Jason Unruh's videos, but I also began listening to Comrade Nicole's videos, also on YouTube. And it was Comrade Nicole's videos which led me back to Third Worldism, to Maoism-Third Worldism, or Marxism-Third Worldism. And so now I once again call myself a Third Worldist. And I do that for a number of reasons, some of which may be different from some other Maoist or Marxist Third Worldists. Basically, I am very skeptical about the ability of the First World, the Western world, or the global North, to survive. I was accused by someone recently of being callous because I said that I thought that the First World will ultimately be annihilated, that the contradictions of capitalism are so great in the First World, which literally makes the First World unsurvivable. And the person said, so you are actually wishing death on billions of people? Absolutely not. I am, I believe, a very compassionate, very empathetic individual. I don't want to see anyone suffer. I care about people, and I care about their problems. And when I can do so, I always try to help them, including financially. But I just don't see a way out. I don't see how the Western world, how the First World, with all of its contradictions, with all of its wars, with the climate change that it has initiated in this world, which has now been taken up by many other countries not in the First World. But the First World just appears to me to be on its last legs. I live 3 miles from Mexico, here in the Rio Grande Valley of deep South Texas. And when I go down there, the people there are so wonderful. The ones I've met are very, very poor, most of them. But they rise above their poverty. They understand the situation that is taking place just north of them. They know the way that they are oppressed. Why, for example, has NATO sent troops to supposedly help Ukraine, whether rightly or wrongly, but has not sent troops or any sort of help to fight off those horrendous cartels just 3 miles to the south of me? And in fact, right next to me, I live in Mission, Texas. There's a town called Alton. That is one of the major U.S. headquarters for the cartels. That is a place where they receive much of the drug smuggling through tunnels, and then they take it and distribute it to the rest of the United States. Why? Because they're poor. It's a poor country. They are trying to survive. Now, I'm certainly not condoning it. I don't condone that kind of activity. The kinds of drugs that they are smuggling into the United States destroy lives. I don't want to see any more lives destroyed. I've seen too many lives destroyed. My own life as a child was destroyed by autism, and it took me decades and decades to rebuild it. But somehow I managed to do it. I managed to rebuild it, but it was a tough job. So when I go down to Mexico, in the past when I've been in the Republic of the Congo, in Central Africa, I see a different kind of spirit. I also see poverty, also in Congo. As I would walk down the main street in Kinshasa, the capital of the country, there are literally dead bodies littering the streets. Apparently every day, workers come along, they pick up the dead bodies, they put them into the back of a truck, and they carry them off and bury them. What a horrible, undignified way to go. So, when I look at the world around me, and certainly this part of Texas has its share of poverty as well, it's nothing compared to what I see in Mexico. It's nothing to what I saw in Congo. And so what I believe is that that is where the revolutions will take place. That is where revolutionary capitalism will be destroyed and replaced by revolutionary communism. Now, that was not a slip of the tongue, because capitalism in its time was revolutionary. It replaced the old feudal system, and it instituted massive changes, many for the good at the time. But over time, capitalism disintegrated, and now we need a new rebirth. A rebirth into revolutionary socialism or communism. And I think that will happen soon. So very briefly, that is why I have become a third worldist. It was a conscious decision, basically returning to Maoism or Marxism-Third worldism, and it has been the greatest pleasure of my life.